Okay, great. Well, we'll get started. Firstly, thank you and welcome today. Thanks so much for giving up your time to attend. My name is Nicola Flannery and I'm the Client Services Manager at U&U Recruitment Partners. Our event today has been timed to coordinate with Are You OK Day this week, and we hope the event will equip you with some skills and practical strategies to address burnout and enable you to reflect on your own well-being. We'll start the presentation with the results from our recent HR Wellbeing Survey before moving to a Q&A with the panellists. Hopefully we will have some time to answer your questions at the end, so send those through in the chat and I'll collate them. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you to all our wonderful panellists. We have Kate.Rye, who is a HR professional with a career spanning 25 years across the aviation, financial and energy sectors. Kate currently works part-time as a senior HR manager and a member of the Brisbane Airport Corporation leadership team. While Kate has a background in all aspects of HR, she currently specialises in remuneration and benefits for BAC and delivers on HR-related projects. In addition to her work, Kate is a mother to 2 teenagers and shares the responsibility of managing the family farm with her 5 siblings, so very busy life. We're also joined today by Liz Tully, the founder and owner of Mental Wellth at Work, specialising in workplace mental health. With over 20 years of human resources experience, Liz is passionate about creating mentally wealthy workplaces. She works with organisations across Australia to build awareness and capability in workplace mental health. We also have Dr. Amy Imms, owner of the Burnout Project. Amy is a medical doctor, author, speaker and burnout counsellor. As a doctor, mother of 5 and a business owner, Amy knows what it's like to be pulled in all directions and burnout. She has also seen countless cases of burnout amongst patients and colleagues, not to mention friends and family. Amy's mission is to raise awareness of burnout as a huge problem facing our society, to reduce stigma, guide workplaces in preventing burnout and assist individuals in their recovery. And last, but certainly not least, the lady who has done all the work behind the scenes for this event, Donna, Thistlethwaite, the founder of Mentally Wellthy. Donna is passionate about creating mentally healthy workplaces because she personally understands the impact of untreated mental health problems on an individual and on the workplace. Donna's quest to help people to thrive so that they can lessen the likelihood of experiencing a mental health problem drove her to start speaking about her experiences and to ultimately establish Mentally Wellthy. Donna is an accredited mental health first aid instructor, resilience at work facilitator, and holds a number of tertiary qualifications. I'll now hand you over to Donna, who will discuss the results of our recent HR Wellbeing Survey.
Thanks very much, Nicola. Let me just bring up our presentation. Okay. How's that, Nicola? Is that presentation moving?
It is.
Beautiful.
It's not in the full screen mode yet, though.
Okay. Let me try something else. Don't you love technology when it works? So great.
We have been busily trialing and practicing all morning, and it's gone according to plan eventually, so bear with us.
All righty. I'm going to try this one once more.
That looks good.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
And is it moving? Is the other slides moving, Nicola?
Oh, not yet, no.
I use this all the time for mental health first aid training, and it usually works just fine. So it would be so nice if we weren't having this lookup right now. Can you see the slides?
We can see the one slide, it's not moving.
And now?
There we go. Yes.
Yay!
Well done.
Beautiful. Success at last. Okay, so let me start by saying last year we conducted a similar survey and we had 469 responses. So this year we had 123 responses. We're not exactly sure why. We did have the survey open this year for 61 days, so the end of March through to the end of May. Last year we had a pretty slow response rate as well, which was why we left it open quite a significant period. We did extend it slightly this time, but we still found there wasn't a significant sort of pickup in the response rate. I'm not sure if that's an indication of the sort of level of workload that HR professionals are experiencing, or more to do with our communication channels in getting the survey out there. But what I can assure you is that the themes, the statistics are very similar to what we saw in last year's survey in 2022. So a little bit about our participants. 66% of them are aged between 35 and 54. The far majority are female, so 85% of this year's respondents were female. And we can see that there's a lot of experience among this group. 61% had 11 or more years of experience, and a quarter of them had 20 plus years of experience. 78% of them identified as HR generalists, although they may have selected other HR disciplines as well. They were very large organisations that they were working for. The majority were between 100 and 10,000 employees, so 73% were from large organisations, and they were from very diverse industry sectors as well. 20% were from government or government-owned corporation. We had 18% from not-for-profit, 18% from professional services. So just a little bit of a snapshot. And as you can see there, 81% of our respondents were Queensland. Probably not a big surprise because a lot of our networks are in Queensland. This was similar to last year. We had 76. The numbers from other states, the percentages were similar, but with a smaller sample size, there were lower numbers of responses from other states. Is it moving on? No. Oh my goodness. Okay, did our slide move? Have you got a new slide there, Nicola?
Not yet, no.
Not yet.
Might have a lag. There we go. Yeah.
Ah, yay. Okay, I hope that's not something I'm going to have to do with every slide. So look, our respondents are very busy. Okay, what they've told us is that 46% of them are extremely busy right now, and 37% still identify as busy. So we've only seen 14% of our respondents saying that they have a manageable level of workload. This is very consistent with how they were experiencing last year as well. So 46% again said they were extremely busy. So at the time of our last survey, we actually had 56% of those people, so around a year ago, saying that they were extremely busy. So whether that's to do with, I guess, a different sample group, or maybe, remembering back 12 months, they feel like they were less busy than they were then. But yeah, definitely what we can see is very high levels of workload. Yay, it's moved. Beautiful. So we asked our respondents what was contributing to their workload. Very much like last year, 62% of them said transformation and change requirements were a big contributor. Again, client stakeholder demands. 56% of them said lack of or inappropriate resources. This year, we introduced a new category, legislative changes, and it seems that is indeed creating a substantial workload for people. for our respondents, and then increased demand for the organisation's products and services and tight deadlines. So this is quite consistent with last year. Something we saw last year was we had a question about COVID-related activities contributing to workload. So around 50%, I think 51% last year, was saying, yes, that COVID was contributing to their work or COVID-related activities, whereas this year it was only 8%. So it appears that, as we would imagine, COVID is not creating as much of a workload impact. The current level of wellbeing for our respondents was 54 on a scale of 0 to 100. So this is a really concerning statistic. You know, it's that's not a really high level of well-being, obviously, and it's something that really does worry me. It was very consistent with the statistic we had last year, which was 53. So 53 on that scale of 0 to 100. And what we also saw in this survey was 57% of our respondents said that they considered leaving the profession because of their well-being. So last year this was 43%. Appreciate again that we do have a smaller sample size. So, you know, anywhere in between those numbers is still highly concerning, especially when we look at the level of experience of this cohort of respondents. You know, we saw that 25% or 26% of them have actually been in the profession over 20 years. So, you know, that's substantial experience that is at risk to our workplaces. So we asked them what words they would use to describe their current level of well-being. Stressed came out very consistent as last year, so just over 40%. We saw anxious go up by 10, so it went from 36 last year to 46. What we did also see was that happy was selected more often as well. So we went we went actually up 10% on that one as well. So we went from 26 to 37% on that one. Yeah, like obviously these words are really concerning. These are, you know, emotions that people are currently, our HR professionals are currently experiencing, feeling. And we also had a free text field here where we asked people if there were other words. And we had burnt out come up like on quite a few occasions in that field. Excuse my hesitance. I've got the notes displayed on my presentation right now, and all it has done is carried over the very first note from slide 1. So I lost the opportunity to have that. So I may refer to my notes from time to time just to make sure I convey all the important information I wanted to share with you. So what is impacting our HR professionals' wellbeing? So the positive impacts include having me time. Now, 85% of them have said that this positively impacts their wellbeing, but as you'll see in future slides, time is a real issue for our HR professionals. So, you know, while it's a real positive, it seems that it's very difficult for them to access. Feeling in control, 68%, social connections, 63%. And what we know from research is that social connection, belonging is a protective factor against mental illness and obviously is very positive for our wellbeing. Structure and planning, 31%, available support, 41%. So we collected this information last year as well. We did it in a slightly different way this year, in that we asked people to select their top 3. Last year they could select as many as they wanted, and so we saw higher statistics last year, but the themes again were very similar. So the negative impact, fatigue, there's probably no surprises here. Being under-resourced, again, stress, dealing with stressed others and current resources. That was interesting. I feel like that is actually less of an issue than it was last year. And in some of the free text fields, we have had the issue of workload and resourcing raised as an issue, as a problem or challenge that HR professionals are experiencing. So as I said, time is the biggest barrier. So 39% of our respondents said that time is their biggest barrier. So, you know, it's a pressure that many of them are experiencing. It was something we identified. Again, it was the biggest barrier last year. And, you know, in evaluating the results in both years, it's really clear that our HR professionals are really at the risk of potential burnout with this time pressure that doesn't seem to be letting up for them. So here's a couple of comments. I'm just going to leave these on the screen for a moment for you to take them in. Yeah, I'll let you read them. So we didn't have these comments, you know, constantly, or, you know, they weren't really common, but they were certainly comments that reflect at least how one of our respondents is feeling. And I personally am so concerned to read these, given, you know, we know the impact of psychosocial hazards in the workplace. And, you know, these people, our HR professionals, you know, they're at the heart of supporting everybody else and, you know, helping the organisation to understand the psychosocial hazards, yet it seems, you know, very much exposed to these hazards currently as well. So who are they turning to for support? What sort of support are they getting? Immediate manager supervisor continues to play a very key role in this. You know, there's definitely support there. They're feeling, so a third of them at least are feeling quite supported by their leader. Organisational support, I think last year it was 18% feeling very supported. That's come down to 11. But, you know, we've got neither supported or a lack of support from the organisation, 21%. So, you know, 1/5 of our respondents don't feel like they have that organisational support. And obviously team and colleagues can be a real support as well. But great to see, you know, leaders fulfilling that role for our HR professionals. So who do they talk to? Yeah, so again, we see the leader right up the centre. 54% speak to their leader when it comes to challenges. Colleagues, about half of our HR professionals do speak to their colleagues for support. But what is really concerning is that 18% of them say they don't feel comfortable talking to anybody about their mental well-being. And that's really consistent with last year, where we saw 20%. So are their organisations doing enough? 89% of them feel like their organisation needs to do more to support wellbeing in the workplace. So 46%, a lot more, 43%, a little more. These rose slightly from last year when the total was 79%. You know, I think this is really important for us to note. That, you know, even our HR professionals in a key role they're in and their sort of ability to influence are still of the opinion that there is a lot more that needs to be done. So what would they like to see offered? We introduced another category this year, and it was senior leadership modelling wellbeing practices. And you know, it just goes to show again, right? It starts at the top. So our HR professionals would like, 63% of them would like to see senior leadership modelling these practices, so leading from the front. They'd like additional leave to maintain wellbeing. I was actually delivering a mental health first aid refresher yesterday, and we had 2 organisations from the aviation industry in that group, and both organisations had recently introduced like a wellbeing leave. So in both cases, it was 2 days. I think one of them was called WellCare from memory. Kate might be able to correct me on that if I've got it wrong later. But you know, this is like leave that you don't need an explanation for, you know, sort of that, sort of putting that positive spin and broadening like the mental health day, and, you know, recognizing that some days it can just be a little bit hard to get ourselves to work. We're not in the right space for it, or we need to do something or want to do something that's actually specifically designed to improve our well-being. So wellbeing check-ins, about half of them would like to see that occurring. And, you know, that's not a hard thing to do. And there are lots of different models and inexpensive sort of methods that can be used for that. And then resilience and other capacity building training. There's definitely some demand for that, or interest in that, 42%. Okay, so can they take time off for their well-being? So 67% of them say that they can. But can they really? When you look at the numbers of days that they're taking off for their well-being, it's still very minimal. And we had a very, very strong theme that time was the biggest barrier for our HR professionals. And, you know, as we read a few slides ago, time for themselves absolutely positively impacts their well-being. All right, so in terms of the future, they are quite an optimistic group. 55% of them are feeling fairly optimistic about the 12 months ahead. So the survey obviously closed at the end of May, but yeah, they're hopeful, and certainly we've seen some sort of suggestions of you know, a bit of a reduction in that level of busyness, and, you know, more people saying that they're feeling happy. But then we also saw, you know, the other end of it as well. But yeah, it's let's hope that their optimism is achieved, is rewarded. Alrighty, so let me just pause there to ask if there's any quick questions, because obviously we want to get into the panel as well. I'm just going to pause there. Nicola, do we have any questions?
No questions yet.
No questions yet, and maybe we'll visit that again towards the end of the session. But look, I just would like to thank U&U Recruitment for partnering with Mentally Wellthy on this project. Your support is always so appreciated, and I would also like to thank Sandy Hutchinson at Career Money Life as well. She helped us to get the word out through her HR community.
Great, thanks, Donna. So we'll go to the panel now with some questions. I think it will be good to start off by probably defining what is burnout. And Amy, as an expert in this area, we might get you to answer that question for us.
Thanks, Nicola. And yeah, lovely to be here as part of this discussion about something that's so important. And burnout is a word that has been increasingly used, and we saw that being used by participants of that survey, but we often mean different things by it. And definitions have changed over the years. So the most recent one that's been quite formal that's come out was from the World Health Organization a few years ago. And they talk about it as being workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Now, we all have workplace stress at times. So when is it burnout and when is it not burnout? What we're looking for is when over a period of time, we end up with 3 key elements evolving. It doesn't have to be all of them, but this is the general picture we get. So the first one is exhaustion. So we're tired all the time. We've got no energy. We're often not sleeping very well, which just makes that worse. The second one is depersonalization. Now, this is where we often pull back, we withdraw, we're often more irritable and frustrated, we're not concentrating as well, we've often got a really big dose of guilt in there, we start to feel cynical about things, we don't have that same kind of empathy for those around us. And then the third one is reduced efficacy. Now, this is where sometimes we're not performing as well in our role as we usually would because we're not concentrating as well and we're tired and we're not making as good decisions as we usually would. But what we really notice here is just a perceived reduced efficacy. So if I asked your colleagues or your boss how you're going, they say, yeah, great, really high performer, no concerns. But you feel like I'm not doing as good a job. What am I doing here? What's even the point in me being here? And I was encouraged to hear in the survey results that high level of optimism, because another thing that usually evolves as burnout worsens is this feeling that there is no way out of this, that I just can't see how this is going to get better. And obviously that's a really hopeless, kind of helpless place to find yourself in. Now, these sort of features often build up really slowly. And this is really tricky because that means we often don't notice it because it's slow. It doesn't sort of jump up one day. It comes slowly over months or maybe even years. And so we just start to see that as kind of normal. Not only that, burnout rates are well over 50%. So a lot of people we're seeing around us are feeling the same. So again, we sort of normalize that to a certain degree and we explain away all these symptoms without really taking that seriously. And one of the things that I found helpful for that is to get people to just take a few minutes to pause and reflect in one go on all of those things at once, so that we can't just dismiss each of those symptoms going on individually. So there's a burnout checklist, which I'm not sure if I can share it on the screen here. I'll just see. I might be able to get this to come through. Does that come through at your end?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So there is an online version of this. If you go to theburnoutproject.com.au, you'll see a button on there that says take the burnout quiz. And it's just having a few minutes to just think about what are some of those common signs of burnout? What do we notice? So you'll see in there some of these questions are things like that sinking feeling before work, like Sunday night, or even the whole of Sunday or the whole of the weekend. By the time we're really stressed about work, we're already dreading what it's going to be like on Monday. Some of those things that I talked about before with that fatigue, for example, we also see these secondary effects. So, for example, things like procrastinating and not concentrating well are relatively primary effects, but all of this doesn't feel good. We don't want to feel stressed and tired all the time. So we also find ways to escape that, and we all have different ways we might do that. So it might be that we have increasing use of alcohol, or we online shopping for a bit of a dopamine hit, or we watch a lot of TV, and all these things that we do to just sort of distract ourselves and not feel that stress for a little while. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with those things, but it can be an issue if it's stopping us from doing the things that we really want to do in life. And usually when we stop doing those things, all those feelings just kind of come back again. So have a look at that if you want to, and see, where are you at the moment, and notice what are those features, and are these continuing? So as I say, we all feel these things sometimes, but if this is continuing for 6 weeks, a couple of months, and it's not really going away, and you might think, oh, it's okay, I can just push through because this project's about to end, or, just when I get through this bit, it'll be all right. And that just never happens, does it? By the time we get to that point, another thing's come up and another thing's come up. So it's really noticing, is this actually persisting, or is this just a really short phase, and then really life in general is okay and sustainable?
Yeah, that's great, Amy. Thanks so much. You put so much definition around what that actually is. And it's always good to have, I guess, a personal experience to hear from too. Liz, you've got a situation to share with us from your career about when you were experiencing burnout. Tell us how that came about and what it felt like.
I certainly did. Thank you. And great to be here. And Amy, thanks for sharing that list, because as I was looking through the list, I was like, tick, off the list.
I was writing it down.
Thank you. That's quite confronting. So yeah, happy to share my sort of personal experience. So this was a few years ago. It was sort of pre-COVID, and I had just been promoted into a head of HR role. So my role was a HR business partner. My manager had gone on maternity leave or parental leave, so I'd taken the stretch to go up to a head of HR role, which I coveted and really wanted and was dead excited to do. But it sort of really, in the first sort of couple of weeks and months, really became apparent that the workload, it was multifaceted. So the workload was massive, which I understood was going to be. But I guess the depth and the breadth of, like all HR professionals, we get involved in loads of different things which we didn't know we needed to. So that was sort of another factor. But I think the biggest sort of factor for me was the conflict within the organisation, or in particular the two people I reported to. And that's something that I really, I guess, underestimated. So over the sort of weeks and months, it was sort of there, it was almost there in the background, but I didn't really understand the impact that had on me. So I was, looking through the checklist. I was not sleeping very well. I was really worried all the time. There was a lot of imposter syndrome happening for me. My heart rate would really increase. At one point, I was thinking, am I going to have a heart attack or a breakdown, or, what was happening? And it all sort of really came to a head after sort of the months went on. So it's interesting when you say about that prolonged period of time. That was certainly the case for me. So there was a sort of a prolonged period of time, and it really came to a head where I remember it clearly. I had a conversation. I reported to the general manager of the business, who was very focused on growth. So we were going through a exponential growth period. And I also reported to the HR director in Sydney. And I'd have a conversation in the morning with the general manager talking about expansion into China. We need to recruit, 30 people in China and 20 people in Hong Kong and and build this huge people plan. And then in the afternoon, I spoke to my HR director, and she said, you actually need to reduce your headcount by 20 people. So it was just this real sort of opposition of being pulled in two different directions. I kind of like it to my dad's telling me one thing, my mum's telling me the other thing, and this sort of fighting between. So what ultimately happened was that I hadn't sort of done any real self-care. I was interested to sort of note one of the comments about the person who was the head of safety and wellbeing. I felt very much the same, like, I'm the head of HR here, I'm really struggling. I should be able to do this. So if anything, I worked more rather than working less. And that resulted in pretty much I call it a meltdown. So what I did was I actually I went to the GP because I was really concerned. I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack. So I went to my GP, and she diagnosed me with a general anxiety disorder, prescribed 2 weeks off work, and pretty much prescribed self-care, which I was actually really pleased about. So, different people have different experiences of GPs. But what was very interesting during the time was I'd sort of obviously been in touch with both managers to let them know what was happening. And the text message I got back, I will never forget, from my general manager, said something along the lines of, okay, take a couple of weeks off, do some yoga and align your chakras, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. So there was just no empathy. I felt really invalidated, and I was really worried about going back to work. So I did do some yoga, I did align my chakras, I did a lot of other self-care as well. And then when I did return back to work, again, that was sort of quite telling. So I'd arrived at work on the Monday morning, I'd driven into the car park, and literally as I drove into the car park, my manager in Sydney, the HR director, called me, and I think she probably did say, are you okay? But then it was launching straight into, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it was I just walked straight back into the lion's den, so to speak. And just to sort of quickly sort of round that story out, another sort of interesting point was that during the time that I'd had off, a colleague, so I was part of a senior leadership team, and the head of sales, or the sales director, during the time I was off, he'd actually had a heart condition. So he'd gone in, had surgery, had a stent put in, and he was back to work fairly quickly. But what was really interesting was that the way that I was, I guess, dealt with versus his physical illness. So, for example, we had a really relentless travel. So we were in Sydney and Melbourne pretty much most weeks. And the first week back, the general manager said to the sales director, oh, mate, skip the Sydney trip, or I'll do the Melbourne trip for you, don't you worry about it. But there was just nothing for me whatsoever. It was just sort of get straight back onto it. So yeah, it was a hard lesson. It was hard at the time, but I now sort of see it in hindsight, many years later, I now see it as a bit of a breakthrough rather than a breakdown. So that was
absolutely
my experience. Yeah.
What steps did you take? You seen your GP, which was a great first step. What steps did you take to really regain your, your mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, it took me, I saw out the end of the year of the secondment, and then I stepped down into my original role. So I wish I knew now what I knew then, because I've done a lot more study and research on mental health. But honestly, I felt like a bit of a failure. So I felt like I'd failed the role. I felt that, going back to that comment around, I should do this better. So what ultimately happened was I ended up reducing my hours. So I actually went down to 3 days a week, and then did some further study and set my own business up, etc. So it did ultimately lead me to leave the industry. So I was really interested to see that statistic about number of people who've left HR. So it's probably not very much a good news story, but that's my personal experience.
Great, thanks, Liz. And Kate, we look at the employer perspective. So when we've spoken in the past, you've said you didn't think you were experiencing burnout, but then you had a look at some of the symptoms, and a lot of those resonated with you. You were on the path, if not at least a bit crispy, as Donna likes to say. Could you share with us how your employer demonstrated support and some of the strategies that helped you navigate that situation?
Sure, Nicola, and thanks again. I certainly had a very different experience to Liz. I would say that when Donna contacted me to participate in this discussion, I actually thought she had mistaken me or had gotten the wrong person, because I like that second comment, just like Liz said, I worked in HR, I should do this better. I should know how to do this better. And that feeling of being ashamed, I really resonated with that particular comment. But for me, I would say, my organisation is quite amazing. So I work for the Brisbane Airport Corporation. Our values are very important to us. Our culture is very important to us, and it is role modelled throughout the organisation. Our people are core. So one of our stakeholders, we always talk about our stakeholders. Every introduction the CEO makes, whether he's talking to the BLT, whether he's talking to, which is our leadership team, or whether he's talking at staff talk. So we get together, the whole organisation, once a month. He'll always talk about our key stakeholders. We have 4 of them. One of them is our employees, and it's about getting that balance right. We always talk about our values, and again, it's role modelled from the top. Our CEO always talks about our values of care, communication, collaboration, and courage. And I would put almost my house on it to say that I think every employee would be able to tell you what our 4 C's are. They're really important to us. And I've witnessed where the CEO has said, we're making decisions about anything related to people, take it back to the 4 C's. Are we doing the right thing by the people? So it is certainly role modelled from the top. HR has a seat at the table. So our EGM, my leader, Jane, does sit at the ELT. We can take all people matters through the ELT. So we're really, people are paramount. We also, and it's not necessarily a strategy point of view, but one of the things we do is we survey our staff, and we do pulse surveys quite regularly. And during COVID, one of the things we did have to downsize. So we dropped in FTE headcount by 25%, and it was significant. This organisation had never experienced anything like that before. We had a lot of long-term serving employees. So it really took its toll on our people. That impacted also on the workload. And yes, aviation was not a great industry to be in during COVID, because we were pretty much flatlined. But HR's role was to, we had to help people, work their way through all the mandates and the vaccinations, and we had to make sure our essential staff, because you still need to keep the airport open, so we had to look after our essential staff to make sure that they could work. So there was a lot of things that we had to deal with, and we also had to convert, like everyone else, to people working from home, and it was our job to make sure they were okay as well. But during all of that, I can say that we felt supported. So we, in terms of we do staff surveys. One of the feedback came through about our workload and resourcing. That was a real concern. And we take our staff surveys very seriously here. We do actions as a result of our, anything that comes out, we talk about it. We're transparent. We don't hide anything. We share the good news with the bad. And one of the things is the CEO, Gert-Jan de Graaf, got up and said, this is an issue. We need to talk about it. There is nothing that can be done on an airport alone. He's very renowned for saying that. It is about how can we work together. One of our values is collaboration. How can we, solve these problems together? And it's also saying to the leaders, you need to be talking about this. You need to, and now it's a KPI for all leaders. We have shared KPIs that managing and prioritising workload so it's manageable is really important. And he's also given license to our employees to speak up, to show, again, one of our values, which is courage, to kind of go, I'm drowning here, I need some help. So in terms of my experience, when when Donna approached me about talking on the panel, I kind of went, wow, I didn't think I was burnt out. I did go and do some research, and I kind of was a little bit surprised that I was definitely crispy. I think my leaders saw it because there were some things like being completely overwhelmed with pieces of work, and I was making them more complex in my head than what they were. I just felt like I couldn't get into anything or to start things, and to-do lists just seemed to be getting longer. My emails were getting out of control. And my leader is... And I know I've got two of my colleagues on the call, but she is extraordinary. She really is. What she did, I can talk to her about anything. So she has created an environment that is incredibly safe, that we can talk about, how we're feeling. And one of the things that occurred to both of us recently is that when she allocates work to me, she's probably not, she said, she owned it and said, I probably don't think about you being part-time, because that's been a real issue for me, is the workload. I am, and Jane will say it, and probably every previous employer I've had would say that I'm the worst part-time employee they've ever had, because I tend to work more than less. And she was really concerned about getting my balance right. So what we did is we, developed a plan. I've got a 12-month plan. I also looked when things were really hitting. And one of the things we really, we realised as an organisation is a lot of the priorities or the timelines we set, we do it to ourselves versus, other people putting those timelines on us. So, certainly developed a plan. We've worked in terms of trying to get our timing, how much time does it take? So very much a time study as well as when the work hits. And now we're really, conscious of the fact that, my workload, the goals that I've got set really need to reflect that I'm part-time.
No, that's great. And we've done a lot of work with Brisbane Airport Corporation over the years, and a really great culture. And I'm sure you're very proud to work there.
I am. I'm incredibly proud. Yeah.
That's excellent. I think we've got time for one more question to the panel, and I might throw it out there more broadly. But what advice would you have for our audience today who feel they may be experiencing burnout, and for those who have a role to play in ensuring their employees don't get burnt out? Have you got any practical strategies that you've implemented or that you're aware of that might help manage that risk of burnout?
I'm happy to share the approach that I use with my own patients, if you like, as a bit of a framework, because there's so many things we can do. This is part of the problem, so many things. And it's different for everybody because everyone's got different circumstances and different pressures in life, inside work and outside of work. And if you're working for somewhere like Kate versus somewhere like this was working, it's a totally different approach. So my big encouragement in terms of personally addressing burnout is to think through 3 key areas. And if you can just find one little thing that you can start doing in each of those areas, and then you can build on that. So we don't want to just jump in and do a whole lot of different things and feel like we've got to overhaul life. So one of those is thinking about, for you, how do you interact with the world around you? So this is thinking like, what kind of support systems do I have at work, in my personal life? Who's there, who's around me, and how can I draw upon that or expand that if I don't have enough there or at the right types of support? Really other important thing in terms of how we interact with the world around us is boundaries. That's, for me personally, been one of the biggest things, and nearly everyone I work with. And so this is where we're really thinking about those workplace factors as well, and things like workload. What kind of boundaries do I set? How our work infiltrates other areas of life. Like, how do we separate work and life? Do we get work emails after hours? Do people call us after hours? How do you deal with all of that? And how do we make it so we can actually switch off when we're at home and get that time where we're away, or we can relax and get that me time that I think Donna was mentioning earlier that people so badly want. The second one is to then turn more inward and think about, how are you personally responding to stress? Are there things in life where you actually have time to do something that you enjoy, or is a little bit sort of fun? Are there specific issues? Somebody mentioned imposter syndrome before. So imposter syndrome and perfectionism, for example, are really, really big ones. So having a think about where is there space in there where we can address something. And then the third one is coming back to the basics that we all know about, but are much easier said than done. And that's our sleep, what we're eating, and are we moving our bodies? They can have such a big impact on our well-being. So is there just a small change there in each of those areas that you can start off with and then slowly build on that. And when we talk about the workplace side of things, and so this is particularly relevant not only for yourself, thinking about what boundaries or what changes do you want to make, but also if you're supporting other people in the workplace. Then we look at workload, which has come up so many times already, and thinking particularly about unequal workload distribution. Are our high performers, who are the ones who burn out, they feel like I'm inadequate and have shame, but actually they're usually the ones doing some of the best. What's the workload like? Control or autonomy? Can we give people more scope to have autonomy in their work and the way they do it? What kind of reward are they getting? Are they feeling a sense of achievement or feeling good about the work that they're doing? Are there opportunities there for them? Fairness, and this particularly comes back to Donna, you're talking about some of those stresses that people had in terms of legislation change and organisational change, huge things, and so much of it is more to do with how that's communicated than necessarily what that change is. Our support and community in the workplace, which again we've talked a lot about, and then those values, and if the organizational values match our personal values. So if you can go through those 6 things, so workload, control or autonomy, reward, fairness, community and values, and you might not be able to change all of those. You might be in a circumstance where some of those are very fixed, but looking for where are those points then where we can change things. So maybe it's that we can't change the workload right now, but we can give you more autonomy over how you do it, for example, or we can give you more reward in another way, which helps to compensate for another area that we can't give you. So that's my suggestion. It's just a bit of a sort of way to start thinking about what can I begin to do, and then really tailoring it, making sure that you're not just doing what everybody else says, but really in your life, what is it that needs to change?
Yeah, excellent. Donna, did you have some addition?
Oh no, I was just loving all over that what I was saying. It sort of links in beautifully with what we know are the psychosocial hazards, and also the sort of recommendations I make, using the resilience at work framework. So yeah, you just speak my language, Amy. So beautiful.
That's great. Well, I will do one more call out for any audience questions. Just pop them into the Q&A. Although it has been very comprehensively covered, the topic, I have to say, by all of you. So thank you for that. Donna, do you want to just update the audience on the report they're going to receive over the next few weeks while we're waiting to see if we get a question?
Yeah, sure. So shortly after today, we will send out a copy of the recording of this webinar. So feel free to share it in your HR networks and, help us to reach more people so that we can support them. I think, Kate, Liz, myself, HR is our background. So Nicola mentioned, I have some tertiary qualifications. So that is in HR, and I've had quite significant corporate HR experience as well. And the reason I initiated the study was because I just think, particularly during COVID, it was like all roads led to HR, and I think that still exists. And I think HR aren't necessarily great at reaching out for support. So I really want to see that change. And so what you can also expect is the report in the next sort of week or two. To be honest, I've been managing my own mental health to make sure that I haven't been under too much pressure, because there's been a lot going on in my business lately. After the session, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording, but we'll include all of our contact details as well. So you can reach out to any of us if you have further questions, or if you want to explore working with us, or getting any support for us, because certainly the surveys show that there are a lot of HR professionals that are at risk of burnout. That was why we wanted to feature this topic, and so we're here to support you, basically. We love HR.
We love you too, as a non-HR person. We'd be lost without you. So we've still had no questions come through, so we can leave everybody with 8 minutes time today. Use it wisely, contribute towards... Oh, sorry, Donna.
Can I just check, are there any, like Liz, Kate, are there any sort of other strategies that you found really helpful? I'm really keen for people to take away practical strategies. I know Amy gave us some great ones. Are there any that haven't come up yet?
I think for me, it's just asking for help. So, HR people are humans. So we had
totally
within the organisation I work for, we did have quite a lot of, wellbeing strategies as such, but it was more my mindset that I should have this. I'm in this fancy role, I'm head of HR. But look, I mean, I don't know, given the environment, if I had a pass for help, I don't know. But I think that would certainly be now my starting point, is saying, I'm not coping, or whatever words you want to use. I need some support. I need some help. That would be my my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, beautiful, Liz. Did you have any, Kate?
I think for me, I'm giving myself a bit of a break. I don't need to be as responsive. Like, I think there's in our minds that someone sends an email, you've got to respond. I think I'm kind of just being a bit more realistic about what I can achieve. I think the other thing for me is, being part-time, I'm trying to use my days away from work really wisely as well.
Beautiful.
I'd say one last comment as well, and that ties into what you're saying as well, about having that time away. And you mentioned before having that extra leave. I think that's so important, how we use that leave. But also, you're saying that time pressure is such a big thing. I'm such a big fan of things that don't take extra time. There are so many strategies that it's just doing something you're already doing, but doing it a little bit differently. And so it's, what am I doing on my commute to work, or what am I thinking about when I'm walking the dog? And really little strategies like that feel so insignificant when you're so stressed, but they don't add extra time, and they can make such a big difference overall when we do it regularly.
So agree with you, Amy. I feel like I could speak to you for days, Amy. Such a cool topic. Yes, I love breathing. A lot of participants will say to me, oh, but I don't have time for this stuff. I'm like, you're breathing anyway. Like, why don't you just tune into that breath for a little while, even for just a couple of minutes, and that can actually calm your nervous system down. But yeah, people just think, no, I have to go, do, just go out into the backyard or to the park near your office, take off your shoes, just give it 10 minutes, connect with the earth, calm your system down, and the research has shown you are more productive in the time after that, so just getting some of those strategies out there. And I've really got to give a plug for I reckon all of you ladies will know it, James Clear's Atomic Habits. I think when we're looking to introduce new resilience strategies, or get rid of some bad habits or obstacles to our good habits, that is just the most amazing book.
And having a book or somebody to support you, like having somebody else involved in some way, I just think is so powerful too, because we're talking about making changes to something that you've probably been doing for decades, like that's just your habits. And it's it's easy to say all these things, but to actually do that week after week is actually so hard. So whether it's like a colleague or a boss, or just having somebody who's checking in with you regularly, I think is so key to actually following through and just making those small shifts that pay off.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting point, Amy. I got called on my own behaviour recently by a team member. So, because I'd noticed that they were working long hours and I was worried about them, and they made a comment about the, pot calling the kettle black. And it was a real moment for me that I kind of went, man, I've really got to role model the right behaviour here. And being in HR, I think you've got that added pressure, but I kind of went, you know what, it was such a moment that I had that I kind of went, I've got to take this. This is a sign for me.
Absolutely. Nicola, can I just say one final thank you as well? Look, I just, again, I want to reiterate my thanks to U&U. I would like to thank all of our 123 survey participants and everyone who tuned in today to this session. And I'd also like to thank our wonderful panelists. So I really appreciate you getting involved in this.
Great.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Have a great day. And we'll follow up with the recording and the details of the panelists this afternoon.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.